Hello and welcome to the 12 Days of Christmas series. My name is Joanna Daniel. If this is your first time on the series or on our channel, I am founder of Wounds to Scars, where we work with adult survivors of childhood trauma and women who experience abuse. And we do that through conferences, retreats, and online courses. So in this 12 Days of Christmas, I'm giving you tools to cope over the holiday season, just tools to cope with family life, and also highlighting some of the things that as trauma survivors we experience and we go through. Today, I'm talking about types of inner child wounds. And the term inner child is the experiences that we had early in life, those wounds that was created early in life through abandonment, through rejection, through sexual trauma, through the different types of adverse childhood experiences that we go through. And so the term inner child means that the wound that was created at whatever stage it was in your life that needs healing, because we will grow chronologically, but the record of the pain stays at that age. So when we have to often go back and do that work of healing and address the 5-year-old and address the 10-year-old and address the 2-year-old or whatever age or stage you were in life when the pain happened, it's important that healing happens. So I want to talk about four rather of those types of inner child wound. Now there are many. When I do my inner child coaching program, we do a group coaching program and we do one-to-one coaching program. So the first session is an assessment where we identify the wound. So for those who are on the coaching program, you'll understand this. For those who aren't, stay with me, and I'm going to go through 4 of these types of inner child wounds. So first is the self-sufficient person. Sometimes we become self-sufficient. We become independent. We look after self. I don't need anyone is some of the messages that we're saying there. I don't need anyone. I can do it. I'm capable. I'm efficient. Because we've had to learn how to be capable and efficient. We've had to learn how to not rely on anyone. And so we learn how to do things on our own. Oftentimes we sabotage sometimes relationships because we're used to doing so many things on our own. And sometimes this type of wound, of course there's insecure attachment that is attached to this wound because we've not had secure attachment. We've had to look after ourselves so much, and so we continue to do that. And the next is the caregiver. So it's the self-sufficient person and then the caregiver. The caregiver, we need people to need us. And sometimes the thought is I shouldn't hurt anyone. And we feel like we need to look after everyone. And you might recognize yourself in these type of wounds. It's okay if you recognize yourself and the actions and behaviors that you have. What's really important is that you can understand, you have an understanding, you now have an awareness of why you're doing what you're doing, why you're the caretaker. So sometimes when we're caretakers, we look after people physically, and sometimes we look after people emotionally when we're caretakers. So the emotional caretaking means that we carry the emotional load in the relationship. We carry the emotional load, whether it's the romantic relationship, the friendship, or the family. We carry the emotional load. You fix everything and you make sure everybody else is okay. And sometimes to the detriment of yourself, you're looking after everybody. Sometimes the caretaker, sometimes it's codependent, because you've learned how to do that. You've learned how to let people need you. And so there's a satisfaction that's derived from that. There's a sense of worthiness, sometimes a sense of value that is attached to the caretaking. And then there is the powerless child. When we feel powerless, when we have, and this happens when boundaries were not present, you did not have autonomy, and you sometimes later in life you still don't have autonomy. You have no agency. You struggle with making decisions for yourself. You struggle with putting boundaries in place and to do the work of communicating those boundaries to others, to ensure that people respect your boundaries, because you felt powerless. When you were young, nobody saw your boundaries, nobody respected your boundaries, nobody took the time to show you and teach you about yourself and to teach you about your own boundaries. Nobody respected your things. And so that's where the lack of agency comes in. You might struggle with decision making, and you tend to refer to other people when you have to make decisions, just to check in, just to make sure everything is okay. Now, once again, being able to recognize these wounds is one thing, okay? And if you're hearing yourself in any one of these wounds, whether the self-sufficient, the caregiver, or the powerless child, that's okay. And awareness is not a bad place to be. Awareness is a good place to be, because it's from there that you begin to learn and to grow and to be able to make changes or get appropriate support for what you need. Because sometimes, recently somebody sent me a message. No, I was talking to someone, and they said, can you recommend a book for me, because I want a book about, and they told me what they wanted a book about. Now, they didn't have a good understanding of why they wanted a book. They wanted a book about healing. And I said, well, what's wrong? What area of your life needs a book? So tell me what it is that you think you're struggling with, for me to know which book might be appropriate to recommend. So that's the beautiful thing about understanding the inner child wound, because when you understand it, then you can put appropriate systems in place to heal and to help yourself. So, for example, if you know that you identify with the powerless child, you have this overriding need to fix things for people, you're struggling with boundary setting, you struggle with maintaining boundaries, then you know that's the path that you need to go down, that you need to learn some more about boundaries, that you need to understand your value system and the things that are important to you, and the areas of your life that you feel is too open and you want to boundary it. You might want to boundary your time and your resources, um, your intellect. You want to boundary your finances. Your home might need to be boundaried. But until you know, then you can't make any changes. So it's important for you to know so you can make changes. So if you see this as just a learning process, you're just learning and understanding what the wound is and know what to do next. So the final one I'd like to talk about is the failure. The failure, the person who have this overriding sense of failure. And because there's this overriding sense of failure, there is the negative thoughts of not good enough, feeling worthless, others are better than me, I will never get it right. Never. It's so there's a lot of negative speak, as you can hear. I'm not good enough. I am not, and I always say good enough for who and what, because we are enough. You are enough. You're enough for you. You're enough for your family. You're enough for your children. You're enough at work. You're enough. You're enough in so many places. But sometimes there can be that overriding sense of not being good enough. There's this feeling of worthlessness. And again, that's a negative thought process, perhaps because that sense of failure didn't come from you, and it didn't come from no anywhere. It came from people telling you and projecting and saying things. Maybe there were comparisons. Why can't you be like so and so? Why can't you be like your brother? Or can't you be like your sister? How come you're not good at this, and why you're not good at that? And there's this expectation sometimes that people think you're going to fail. Oh, there's no point teaching her that because she'll never learn it. Or there's no point doing that because they'll never get it. And so there's this overriding sense of failure. Or if you fail at something, say you didn't get 100% in your class, you got 80. Well, that was never celebrated. It was seen as failure, because you take your report card home and they'll say, well, how come the neighbor's child got 95 and you got 80? Why couldn't you get as much as? So then there's a sense of failure. You may make dinner, but you were never thanked. It was always, well, this wasn't done good enough, and why did you burn the rice? So your sense of failure didn't come from you. It didn't come from the mistakes that you're making now as adult. The sense of failure came because when you were younger, those were the messages that you get that told you that you weren't good enough, that told you were worthless, that told you that other people were better than you, that you'll never get it right, nobody never does anything. We get things right every now and again. We get things right sometimes. Even the person who made mistakes still get things right. And everybody make mistakes. Everybody does. And there's also this overriding sense of shame that is attached to failure. And I think shame is attached to all the inner child wound, the self-sufficient, the caregiver, the powerless child, and the child that carries a sense of failure. Shame is attached to most all of these wounds. And shame keeps us trapped in our positions that we're in. Shame, it won't set you free. So in order to be free, one of the things to do again is to tackle shame. So there are many resources that are available that can help you to tackle shame. There are many resources that can help you to set boundaries, that can help you to understand some more about the wounds that you experienced in childhood, what's connected to those wounds, and how you're living them out now in your adult life. It's really important to understand what's my wound, where did it occur, how am I recreating these patterns in adult life, and what are the things that I can do to begin to change. It's really important to begin to do that. Now, you are worthy of setting boundaries. You're worthy of getting help to understand and to fix those negative messages that tells you that you're not good enough, because that's not true. That tells you that you're worthless, because that's not true either. That tells you that there are other people that are better than you. Well, we won't measure ourselves or compare ourselves, because there are always people that do things better than us. Doesn't mean that they are better than us, though. They're always they're you. There are things that you do that no one else can, because your gifts and talents can be uniquely carried out by only you. No one else can do that for you, or no one else can do it in the way that you do it. And so it's important to be able to address those, for the self-sufficient child to understand that we're not islands, no one is, and that we need each other, and that we're stronger together. And you might have experiences where you have people in your life that have not been safe. And so it sends you back to rely on yourself. And I want you to know that maybe, we let each other down. And maybe there are people that have let you down, that have damaged your trust, that have sent you back into the cycle and reminder of the pain when you couldn't depend on the adults that were in your life. But there are people who you can trust. And while trust might take some time to build, it's a worthy journey to take. And for the person who's the caregiver, who have developed codependency, because those were the patterns that helped you, that kept you safe, that made you survive, I want you to know that that the war is over. You can put those tools down, and that you can learn how to have relationships that are mutually satisfying, relationships where there's give and where there's take, where there are people who are emotionally mature and resilient in their own right, that want to share space with you, and that you can live in safe spaces where you're not being the caretaker, but you're being cared for, and that's mutual. Thank you for joining me on this episode of 12 Days of Christmas. I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.